The first question that I see on the list, which is actually a really good one, it's how do I know if my business is ready to scale? This is one of my favorite questions to answer, and it's a question that I honestly step on toes over. So if you're not used to spending time with me, know that I like to tell truth. I step on toes. I am really sort of over all of the misinformation that's floating around on the internet. I've been doing this for over 36 years. And so much of what you are hearing, it simply isn't true. And it's keeping your business stalled or stuck, or a lot of businesses are just failing. So let's talk about this thing called scaling. So there's two parts to this that I want to cover in this answer. Number one, there's scaling, which those of us who have been in operations for a long time, when we say scaling, we are talking about your entire business as a whole. There was not such a thing as scaling pieces. And so when I've been a fractional COO for, again, 36 years. And so we are addressing every part of your business, not just one piece. And that's important for you to understand, because when you hear someone say they're going to help you scale, you need to make sure you are clear on what they mean, because you will assume, you will believe, or you may possibly need help in every area, holistic 360-degree help, but that may not be what they're going to give you. So I don't want you to be misled or disappointed. The other half of this is when a lot of people say scale now, they are really talking about one piece, one area, one specific expertise that they hold, one piece of the puzzle. And that's fine, that's great, no shade. But you do need to understand that that's what they're talking about. Because if you are investing for your entire business to run like a well-oiled machine, and they only scale one piece, you're going to be disappointed. I'm good with either one. I just need you to know what you're getting into. The other part of this answer has to do with this myth that scaling isn't important, or you don't think about scaling until you're at $1 million. And that's just nonsense. Scaling at its core simply means that you are improving the way that something is being done, or you are bringing in more revenue without more expenses. That's really the key of scaling. So if that's true, then you are scaling something at every single level of your business. There's always something to scale. The key is knowing what that is. The key is not focusing on something that $1 million business would be focusing on to scale if your business is at 100K. And so that's one of the reasons that I created the profitable framework with the profit finding audit and also the profit profile analysis. So the profit profile analysis is completely free. You can go and take that. Go to profitableempires.com/profit/profile/quiz, whichever one you can remember. I'll put it in the comments for the event when I'm done, or you can find the link in my LinkedIn profile. But when you take that, it will let you know specifically where you are in your business right now. If you're a dreamer, then there are certain things that a dreamer would be focusing on and a dreamer would be scaling. So scaling as a dreamer is going to look totally different than scaling as a leader. All of it is important, but knowing where you are is the first key. So that's number one. Everyone has something to scale. It's knowing where you are and what to scale. Number two, based on where you are, you're going to probably be scaling pieces. But it doesn't mean that the pieces are not going to eventually connect. What it means is that if you're at $100,000, you are not necessarily in the financial position to invest in someone who is going to come in and scale your entire company. And so you may need to scale pieces at a time. So the question was, how do I know if my business is ready to scale? If you are in business, there is something to scale. So the question really is, where are you in business? What needs to scale? And what are you prepared to work on? What are you prepared to invest in? And so again, based on where you are, that can be pieces, or that can be your entire company. So if you're thinking about pieces, then the question becomes, what pieces? And I'm going to segue into another question that I see on the list, because it's a perfect way to marry these two things that I'm talking about. And so the question is, how do I prioritize which tasks to delegate first? And so the reason I'm bringing this question into the fold is because when you're talking about scaling, and we're talking about making things better, improving the way that things are done, and expanding or increasing your revenue without increasing expenses, part of that has to do with what are you going to delegate and who are you going to delegate it to. And so when I answer the question of prioritizing what to delegate first, my answer to that is whatever you despise doing. Whatever it is that you dread doing. What you delegate first doesn't have to do with, quote unquote, the thing that people say you should delegate first. I hear that all the time, and that's myth number 2 of this conversation that I want to put a stop to. What you delegate first is the thing that you absolutely dread doing. That thing may be something you're amazing at, but it's still something you dread doing. So if you can get those things off of your plate, then that's going to leave room for you to operate in your genius at a level of excellence. A lot of people are operating in their genius, but they're not doing so at a level of excellence because they're exhausted, they're drained, they're tired. And so when we tie that into scaling and knowing what to scale first, you're going to also need to compare the things that need to be done, the things that don't need to be done, the things that you can automate, the things that you can delegate, and what is moving the financial needle in your business. Some people say, well, the first person to bring onto your team or would be, a CFO or something about financials. Some people would say that it's someone for social media. All of those answers are right, and all of those answers could be wrong because it's completely based on where you are and what you need and what is going to move the needle for you. So if you are looking at what to scale next, if I had to give you a blanket answer, no matter what revenue level you're at, and you really, really, really want to know what should I scale next or first, it is hands down going to be something that has to do with follow-up. Follow-up is the number one profit leak that I see when I do profit leaks audits. Hands down, you are leaving money on the table every single time that you go to an event and you don't follow up. Allegra, stay hand raised, honey. I see you. I'm coming. Every time that you see Every time that you go to an event and you don't follow up, every time that you do an event and you don't follow up, every time that you make an offer and you don't have a way for people to get on your email list, every time that you have an email list and you aren't emailing them, like there are so many profit leaks that are centered around the lack of follow-up. So if you were to back me in a corner and I was asked, no matter what your revenue level is, what is it that I would have you focus delegating around, and what is it that I would have you focus scaling around, it's going to be something about follow-up. Let me bring Allegra up so I can see what her question is. Hi, Allegra. Please unmute. It's always so great to see you. Thank you so much for sharing time with me today. What is your question?
My question is, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Oh, it's in public, right? And my question is, when you're talking about the scaling, and you had just mentioned, like, what they need to figure out what they need, how do I realize a lot of people don't know what a media relations specialist is within the public relations field. A lot of people just think about marketing, and they don't realize public relations has like 10 different categories, and one of them is media, like your presence between you and your clients, or you and your audience, or your target audiences. How do I present or get them to understand like there's a difference or a need for a media relations, like them and their, who they're serving?
Yes, absolutely. That is such a great question. I work with a lot of clients who, what they do, you can't quite put into words, or the words mean a lot of different things to different people, and so it creates some confusion, and we know a confused mind does not buy. And so you are an amazing example of where storytelling is going to be important for you. So when someone asks you, what do you do, as opposed to necessarily just saying, I am a media relations specialist, and you know that they're not going to understand what that means, your response can be more like, have you ever been in this situation? Or have you ever needed this? Or did you see when... And I want to give an example, but I don't want to give an example that is not aligned with what you do. So I'm going to give an example, and then Allegra, I want you to give me an example of how you would answer this question, right? So the example I'm going to give is, do you remember when Will Smith did the big smack on stage? Well, I would have done X, Y, Z to help him in that situation. So I'm using that example because everyone knows what I'm talking about. I would like for you to use that example or not necessarily the Will Smith smack example, but the framework that I just gave you, right? So what kind of an example, what have we all seen happen in the media, or what have we all seen happen to a celebrity? What is something that we all have seen that you can say, you know when such and such happened? Well, this is what I would have done. Give me an example, Allegra.
Okay, so my position, what I do in that particular situation as his PR, or you can call him a publicist, or whatever their media. So I would then have the person who either did the action or the language. Like we had one gentleman that just said the N-word by comfortability, instead of making sure that he checked himself before he was talking when he was talking about the Haitians. Instead of making that turnaround it was a vocabulary mix-up, straight up apologize for the negligence, state that the truth, as in he was reading or referencing audios or listening to or reading to audios that were said by prior people, and that he did not take the time to assess the language before he repeated it. So it's always about truth. It's always about keeping that trust with your public. It's not about lying to them. If you have no comment, it's no comment. But do not, beyond belief, do not lie. Do not spin it in a negative way. Admit your actions. Apologize. So with the slap, that was one of my peer reviews for one of my groups. Technically, we do not know what it was about. We had to analyze the body language. So that one there was straight up, you should have apologized. My actions were bad. And say something that it would have been, how would I fix it? How did I fix it? How will I be fixing it?
Okay, Allegra,
Allegra,
let me stop you for a second so I can tighten this in. First of all, let me say, Simi and Simone and Karen, thank you so much for coming by and sharing some time with us. If you have a question, feel free to use the raise hand icon, and I will bring you on stage as soon as I am complete with Allegra. And so, Allegra, I want you to imagine, though, that you are at a networking event and people stand up and they are supposed to say, introduce themselves and say what they do. And so that means that your answer has to be what they call, that elevator speech, right? So very simple, very, very concise. So if you were to say, someone says, well, what do you do? And you say, well, you remember when Will Smith was on stage and he did that big slap?
Okay.
I help him. That's it. Like you're not able to give a whole story along with that. You literally just have to state what it is that you do.
What you did.
Right. So try that.
Okay. I can do that. I can adjust. So that's knowledge acknowledged.
I want you to try it.
Okay. So for Will Smith or another example that I actually did.
Either one, whatever works for you.
I had a cultural group that was in doing their activity, and they approached me and said, we need to target teenagers. So I said, I don't know how to put that. Help me out. Because, and this is what's so interesting, I see this all the time. We want to explain rather than answer. And so that's where you're getting tripped up, and because you know that your title is not something that they readily understand, so you want to explain. But I want to help you get to... One more time.
No worries, go ahead.
In that case, I took their ideas, had them sit down, tell me who their target audience is, told them where they were lacking. I took their ideas, took pictures, made invitations. I actually went looking for educational teachers, students that can actually volunteer, because they were actually looking for volunteers. I was able to establish from 3 to 25 volunteers just by targeting their interests, as in volunteer hours, master class hours, and gave them the information and provided them the opportunity for both parties to connect. Is that good?
Okay. Let me give you an example for you, right? Do you remember when Will Smith did the big smack on stage? I would have helped him save face without losing his entire reputation. Period. Like, you're giving a list of tasks. We don't want tasks. We want what is the thing. Get to the core of what is the thing that you do that, like, you would help everybody do. Like I say that I help women CEOs and founders scale business success without sacrificing happiness.
So I have to, because we're normally in the back, like we're always behind the scenes. We're never like in the front. So it's been a little difficult for me to transition to say what I do, because we're normally the ones supporting the people who are doing it.
But that's okay. So that's assignment, if you will, that I'm going to have for you is I want you to look at, when you think of media relations specialists, all of us COOs, we're behind the scenes. What we do is behind the scenes, right? We're not out front. So I want you to come up with no more than 5 words. No more than 5 words. That is going to be the hardest thing in the world. No more than 5 words to tell people what is the result that you help them achieve, or what is the solution, right? They have a problem. What do you believe is the solution? And it's not always going to be the same. I have 3 different versions of what I say. It depends on where I am, but they all lead to the same thing. I help women scale their business. Period. That is what I do. But because I have seen so many women unhappy, unhealthy, and still didn't achieve the wealthy, I'm passionate about making sure that when they scale, they're actually loving their life, not just scaling because everyone tells them that's what they should do. So I want you to really get to the core of what you believe. Like, that's where all of what you do is coming from. What makes you different from another media relations specialist? What's your secret sauce? Okay? I
want to connect my clients with their community in a healthy and positive way so they can profit and succeed.
What? Now, come on. Bring it. See? Much better. Much better. Much, much better. So I want you to play with that, right? See all the claps, right? That was so much better because it like we feel you now. It wasn't a list of tasks. It wasn't words. It's like now we feel you. We feel your heart. We feel why you're doing what it is that you do. So take that right there and just keep playing with it, massage it a little. What I tell my clients is that the next time you do a networking event, the next time that you are doing a discovery call or whatever you call it, use that phrase and then pay attention to how people respond and how they react. And then just start tweaking it a little, and you'll come upon a phrase and a statement that rolls off your tongue and that causes people to say, oh, tell me more about that. Or, oh, well, how do you do that? Because that's the result that you're after. Okay?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have a question? I would love to bring someone on stage and let's work through questions, thoughts, ideas. Not yet? Okay, that's cool. Let's see who joined us since. Okay. So I was talking about scaling, and there's another part of scaling that I really want to bring up. I think I'm going to do a whole post about this. There is this belief that we grow, we profit, we scale. And that is not true. It's not true. And it's the reason, again, that so many people get to a certain point in their business and they get stuck. Most businesses get to around 750K and they get stuck right there. Businesses that make it to $1 million, They will often scale if they're doing an amazing job with their systems and processes and their people and all that. They will scale to 3 million and then get stuck. It is the two most common numbers that I see, but it's all for the same reason, because here's the truth of what this looks like. It's not grow, profit, scale, 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 scale. It's actually grow, profit, scale, grow, profit, scale, grow, profit, scale, grow, profit, scale. Every single time that you get to a point that you're scaling something, then now you're looking at, okay, it's time to grow again. You're either growing more with that product or service, or you're growing because you're going to expand to add new products and services, or you're going to look at growing again because you're going to add an additional target audience. So if that's true, then once you grow because you've added one of those new pieces, then you have to focus on bringing that new piece to a place of profitability. And then once you do that, then it's time to look at how are you going to scale it. And that's the reason that the process is grow, profit, scale, grow, profit, scale, grow, profit, scale. It's never going to be scale, 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 scale. Even if you only offer one thing forever, life changes, the economy changes, people change, the way you deliver it changes, things change. And so you are always going to go back to, well, how do we grow this more? You made it to 6 figures, great. How are we now going to grow it to mid-6? And then once you grow it to mid-6, you need to look at profit again. How are we going to make this profitable, keep it profitable, sustain the profitability? How are we going to scale? Okay, great. Now you made it to 1 million. Go back to grow, go back to profit, go to scale. That is a huge pet peeve of mine because it is the thing that is keeping people on a hamster wheel of growth. And it's not necessary if you really understand what scaling is about, that you're always scaling. You know that saying, always be marketing? Well, my new saying is always be scaling. There is always something to scale. So I'm going to bring in another question from this list because it ties into what we've already been talking about. Anyone have any questions, please feel free to use the raise hand icon. This is about how do I ensure that my growth strategies align with my long-term vision. And this is another question that I love so much, and it aligns very well with what I have been talking about. Because here's another thing that I believe and from experience have seen over and over. People are getting stuck because they're moving forward. Well, let me explain. Yes, you are moving forward. However, I actually want to encourage you to think backwards. So I want you, instead of thinking about how am I going to get to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, which is challenging if you've never been there. It's almost like deciding you're going to take a vacation. You jump in the car and you're going to go from the East Coast to the West Coast or the West Coast to the East Coast, but you've never done that before. So every single step that you take is new and you have no idea what the next turn is going to be. You don't know which interstate to get on, when to get off. You have no idea. I want to encourage you to think first about the end. Where do you want to be? What is the end goal? What is the end game? Start with the end in mind and then create, build, strategize backwards. because then you know exactly what the next step is. You know what strategies to put in place. You will create strategies and then insert tactics that align with the long-term vision. If you don't do it that way, then you're creating strategies and tactics that actually align with your short-term vision. There's nothing wrong with that. Creating strategies and tactics that align with your short-term vision is fine, and it's a both and. So you want to know what is the long-term vision and work backwards so that you create strategies with supporting tactics for the long-term vision. And then you want to break it down into quarterly strategies and tactics to address the short-term visions. And so that's the way that you can be sure that your growth is ultimately going to align with your long-term vision. Hi, Queenie. Thank you so much for coming by. You know you're always one of my favorite names and faces to see. And so when you think about what your long-term vision is, and here's why the quarterly planning is so critical. It's very stressful. It can be very disheartening. It can be very what's the word I really want to use? I can't think of the word right now. It's motivation. You know, it can really put a damper on your motivation when you're only thinking about your long-term vision. Because long-term visions, those are those big, audacious goals. And when you live in that place day after day after day, and you don't necessarily see the needle really moving, it starts to wear on you. It can wear on your confidence. And so that's why the quarterly planning is so important, so that you can celebrate your wins, so that you can see the small goals, the short-term goals being accomplished and attained every quarter, and those quarterly goals will add up to the yearly goals, which will then add up to the 3-year and the 5-year and the 10-year goals. So that's what I really want to impress upon you when you're thinking about alignment. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about with alignment is about, is your long-term vision aligned with who you be, as opposed to what someone has told you to do or to be? Is it aligned with what you love, or is it aligned with what you're just good at? And this is another one of those both and for me. It's absolutely fine for you to have long-term goals that align with what you're great at. That's wonderful. And I invite you to have long-term goals that are aligned with what lights you up, because they are not always going to be the same thing. Before I look at my list of questions that came in from members, does anyone else have a question they would like to raise their hand and come on stage? I would love to answer real live questions. Let's see, what else is on this list? I want to pick something that is not connected to what I've already been talking about, although that's almost impossible because everything in your business is connected. Everything about you is connected. That's why business problems are personal problems in disguise, because they all connect in some form or fashion. Oh, here's a good one. This one says, what's a quick way to boost my visibility online? This is a great question. One, because a lot of people don't actually want to be visible. I work with a lot of people who are introverts. I actually am an extreme introvert. If you guys haven't heard me say that before, I am the utmost introvert. And so I understand the lack of desire and excitement about being visible. However, if you really want to elevate your business, if you want to elevate your income, your revenue, your impact, you are going to need to be visible. However, that visibility can show up in a variety of ways. So what is it that you love doing? This says a quick way. Well, a quick way is going to be in person. You being at networking events, you hosting your own events, that's a quick way. Anytime that someone can touch you in real life, that is going to be the quickest way. That may not be possible for some people. So then the second way would be something that is live, virtual, but live like a LinkedIn Live or a Facebook Live, so that you're live with them in real time. They can see you, they can hear you, and with LinkedIn Lives and Facebook Lives, you can bring them on stage. So that's going to be the second quickest way. And then the third way after that is going to be a toss-up between something like this, which is live. You can hear me, you can feel me in my voice and in my energy. You're live, I can bring you on stage, we can have a real live conversation in real time. And then running neck and neck with that, but slightly under it, is going to be video, because in video they can see you, they can feel your energy, and it's usually some place where they can put comments that you can then come back to and engage with them. So those are the top quickest. And so that can look like you doing your own event. That can look like you being on other people's podcasts, whether it's video podcasts or it's audio podcasts. That can look like, one of my favorite things right now is doing local dinners. I love this idea because it doesn't require any real work, energy, or expense. It's not an event. It's literally you just inviting people to come have dinner with you. They're paying for their own dinner, so it doesn't turn into an expense if you are not in the position to take on that responsibility. You have to eat anyway. So pick your favorite restaurant. Go on LinkedIn. Find some people in the search who match your target audience. Invite them to come and have dinner with you on such and such a date. It doesn't have to be an agenda to it. You are really there facilitating a conversation. You're introducing people in your town who don't know each other. You're getting to meet people in your town who don't know you, and just naturally allow those relationships to build and to grow. So if you want something quick and if you want something simple, that's one of the ideas that comes to mind. Does anyone else have an idea that they would like to come on stage and share? If you don't have a question, you can always come up here and share some ideas for maybe Allegra's question, or some ideas for questions that I've already answered. That's cool too. Anyone raising hands? Let's see what else is on this list. This is a question that I feel like, I'm trying to figure out, because this is sort of one of those questions that could take on a life of its own. So, let me answer this one. This one it says, how can I ensure my team is aligned with my vision for growth? And so I'm picking this question because it does sort of flow well with some of the other things we talked about today. But I'm picking this one because something that I see happen a lot when people start to build a team and they wind up with a team that they're not able to scale with. So that's why I'm picking this one. And what's really mulling in my brain right now over this question is about the fact that this really starts when you are hiring the person for the team. There are going to be some people on your team who are followers, and there are going to be some people on your team who are leaders. And a lot of times when we are first, Simone, I'm going to bring you on stage and give me just a second to finish this question, and then I'll invite you to unmute. And so when we're bringing people onto the team, we are sometimes thinking about what we need right then. And a lot of times what we need is a follower because we have tasks that we need done or doing. So the person that we're bringing on is a follower. But then we get to a point where we realize that we are still having to check and guide and lead and teach. And we realize what we need is someone who is able to think these things through for themselves. That means we really needed a leader. So if you can think a little bit further than what you need in the moment, is this person really just a short term, you're going somewhere like Fiverr, Odesk, you're bringing someone on to do this task? Or is this an ongoing need that you are going to have, even if they start out as a one-off task? Then you can determine whether you need a follower or you need a leader. Because the other side of this is true. You don't need a whole team of leaders. Somebody has to make the pizza. And if you have a whole team of leaders, you're going to have a mess because everyone's going to have an opinion, everybody's going to have a new idea, and no one's really going to want to do the task. And or they're not going to do the task the way that you need the task done because they're a leader and they have their own idea. So keep that in mind. Simone, please feel free to unmute and ask your question or share your expertise if you have something to share from a question I've already done.
Hi, Dr. Linette.
Hi. I am amazing. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning. So I wanted to chime in on this conversation because it is aligned with my specialty. I help leaders and organizations focus on internal integrity. And when you were talking about, how you get your team to basically, find their place, right? And then with you as a leader, being able to have being someone that they can actually trust. So building an internal team that's trustworthy and would help. A leader would actually need to focus on their principles and ensuring that everyone, even though everyone can't be a leader, as you were saying. I mean, everyone has different tasks, but as long as the leader is in communication with each team member to make them feel like what they're bringing to the table is just as important as what the leader is bringing to the table, and then they can build trust within that within the team when they all focus on one particular goal. So like whatever the goal or the aim is for that particular team, and if everyone kind of knows their position and how it all links up together, because again, teamwork makes the dream work, right? So, but it's just always reminding your team that every action and everything that they're doing is just as important as the next team member. And I yield the mic.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, stay here with me because I want to have a conversation about something that I see happen a lot, and I would love for your perspective and share with our listeners on this. What I see happen, Simone, is that a company will have an amazing worker, an amazing frontline person, an amazing, whatever it is that they do for their job. And they believe that because this person is amazing, that they are going to promote them to a position where they're now supervising people. And then everything goes south. And the company is left wondering what happened. How did we have this amazing worker who now is no longer amazing at their job? And so I would love to hear your perspective on that, because it happens so much.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It happened to me as well, right? So just because you are amazing at your job does not mean that you have the skills, you have developed the skills to lead or manage others, right? So I will say, I'll just give a quick example of what happened to me. It wasn't that I didn't have the skill set to manage others. It was just that they were resistant to me leading them. Number one, because of my age at that time, and maybe other factors. That is a whole nother conversation. But because I was not, I kind of reacted to their negativity, and that, caused me not to be able to manage them properly. So a leader would have to make sure that, number one, before promoting them, to make sure that they're comfortable with what they might come up against. Having that leader making sure that they have someone that they can go talk to help them navigate these problems, or these possible personality conflicts, and things of that nature. So they definitely want to make sure they have some support, maybe HR support, and that they're actually developing the skills themselves to be able to facilitate difficult conversations, because when you're managing people, there are going to be difficult conversations, but if you don't really know how to initiate it, then you won't know how to, alleviate the issue.
And the other side to that is some people are not interested in more work. I almost stutter saying that because it's just not something that I'm not used to. That people who don't want advancement, like some people, they really like what they were hired for. They don't want to advance. They don't want to, they really just want to come to work and do what they were hired for because it's the thing that they love doing. And so have you seen that happen where people are promoted but they didn't really want to be promoted?
Yeah, that's I said that they before that a leader promotes them, that they need to make sure that they want that responsibility. For instance, I'll use my dad as an example. They wanted to make him a manager at this hospital that he was working for, and he was like, no way. Because he's an amazing guy. He actually just retired, but he just did not want that responsibility. But they did offer him the opportunity, which was really good, but he did not want that responsibility. He thought it would be too much.
So let me rephrase my question, because I realized that what I was thinking about is, like, that's an example to me that I was thinking came with people. And so the person may not have wanted the responsibility of managing people. And when I asked the question, I was thinking about people who aren't managing people at all, and the promotion that they didn't want still had nothing to do with managing people. it was literally just that they wanted to continue doing what the job was that they were brought in to do. And it really had nothing to do with whether it was adding a supervisory role or not adding a supervisory role. Would your answer be different or the same?
Maybe a little different because, so again, you don't have to accept, a new role unless it was like an automatic thing, whereas the company was making changes, right? And then they said, okay, well, this role is going to, like, if the company actually did it without your consent, then now you have to maybe, and it's not something that you want to do, well, then again, you have an opportunity more than likely to turn the role down and maybe look for a job outside of that particular organization. Maybe it's time to move on at that.
Yeah, I just think it's sort of interesting, but I've seen it happen a lot, and I'm still trying to digest that because I couldn't imagine people who wouldn't want a promotion, but also spending more time here in the past several years with people from different cultures. My team is very diverse, and that's my first experience with someone who didn't want a promotion. They just wanted to do what it was they were hired to do, and that's it. So I was real interested to see if you'd had that same experience with any of the companies you work with. Any other thoughts before we start to wind this session down, or any more tips that you can share with people who are in the position of hiring or leading a team? Because this call will live on for other people to hear who aren't present today.
I just want to add one quick thing to your last statement. As far as someone maybe not wanting to be promoted, it could also be something as simple as work-life balance. They might have children at home. That new job might require them to work longer. It might require some other things that their current position enabled them to just have more flexibility.
That's good. That's really good. You're right. And sometimes it's just the mental load, right? Even if the work hours may seem the same, just the extra thinking that might go into that new position could be more overload than they want. I love that answer. Thank you, Simone. And I always like to end with a quote from one of our very first panel speakers, because I believe that this so sums up what Intercultural Voices is about. And Gabriela Garzon said, "We are different cultures, but we have the opportunity to create one world." Thank you so much again for being here with me today. I am Dr. Linette Montae, President of Intercultural Voices, signing off for now. Bye-bye, everyone.